December 22nd, 1944, 11:47 a.m. German 5th Panzer Army Headquarters, Wiltz, Luxembourg. General Lieutenant Heinrich von Luttwitz studied the weather reports spread across his field desk, his gloved fingers tracing supply route overlays on the map before him. Outside, temperatures had dropped to -18 degrees Celsius. Snow fell in sheets, accumulating at rates exceeding 8 centimeters per hour. Von Luttwitz, who had commanded armored divisions through 2 Russian winters, understood what this weather meant for mechanized warfare. The Ardennes roads would become impassable. American supply columns would freeze solid. Patton's Third Army, already at the end of a 600-kilometer supply line stretching back to Normandy beaches, would starve for fuel and ammunition within 72 hours. He had calculated this. His staff had verified it against Wehrmacht logistics doctrine developed through 3 years of Eastern Front experience. No army in history had sustained offensive operations through winter conditions this severe while dependent on truck-borne supply lines of this length. The Americans would be forced to halt, dig in, wait for spring. The pause would give Germany precious months to rebuild, to deploy the new jet fighters, to fortify the Rhine. Von Luttwitz permitted himself a rare moment of optimism as he signed the operations order for the 2nd Panzer Division's continued advance toward the Meuse River. What von Luttwitz didn't know, what no German general would understand until they read the post-war logistics studies, was that 400 kilometers to the west, 6,000 American soldiers were accomplishing something Wehrmacht planners deemed physically impossible. The Red Ball Express, operating 132 truck companies across a dedicated highway network, was delivering 12,574 tons of supplies daily through conditions that should have shut down all mechanized movement. German logistics doctrine, forged in the systematic efficiency of the Eastern Front, confronted American logistics reality, a system built on redundancy, improvisation, and production scales that made winter merely an inconvenience rather than an operational halt. German confidence in winter as an ally rested on hard-won Eastern Front experience. Oberst Franz Halder, former chief of the Wehrmacht General Staff, had documented in painstaking detail how Soviet supply lines collapsed under winter conditions during the 1941 to 1942 campaign. His analysis, distributed to all Army Group commands in October 1944, concluded that mechanized armies operating beyond rail lines could not sustain themselves when temperatures dropped below -10 degrees Celsius for extended periods. The mathematics appeared irrefutable. Trucks consumed twice as much fuel in freezing conditions due to idling, warming engines, and increased mechanical resistance. Cold weather starting required 15 to 20 minutes of preparation per vehicle. Tire, rubber hardened and cracked. Engine oil thickened to near solid consistency. Brake fluid froze. Radiators burst despite antifreeze. Road surfaces became ice sheets requiring reduced speeds that cut delivery capacity by 60%. German intelligence had thoroughly analyzed American logistics capabilities. Captured documents from the Normandy breakout showed U.S. Third Army consuming approximately 800,000 gallons of gasoline daily during mobile operations. Intelligence assessments calculated American truck capacity at roughly 20,000 vehicles capable of supporting the advance. Simple arithmetic demonstrated the impossibility. Each truck could carry 200 gallons of fuel. A round trip from Normandy beaches to the German border required 6 to 8 days depending on traffic and conditions. Winter would extend this to 12 to 14 days minimum. The conclusion appeared obvious. American mobile operations would cease when winter arrived. Wehrmacht logistics officers, who had managed the nightmarish supply challenges of Operation Barbarossa across 1,500 kilometers of Russian territory, viewed American supply lines with professional contempt. General Feldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, commanding German forces in the West, informed Berlin on November 30, 1944. The American supply situation is critical. Winter weather will accomplish what our forces have been unable to achieve, the operational paralysis of Patton's Third Army. This assessment reached Hitler's headquarters, accompanied by detailed meteorological forecasts. The winter of 1944 to 1945 was predicted to be among the coldest in 50 years. Intelligence confirmed American dependence on trucks rather than railways for forward supply. The Ardennes offensive was timed specifically to exploit what German planners termed the American logistics collapse window, the period when winter weather would prevent the massive supply deliveries that had sustained Allied operations since June. What German intelligence had failed to grasp was that American logistics weren't designed around efficiency. They were designed around redundancy at scales Wehrmacht planners couldn't conceive. The Red Ball Express hadn't emerged from careful staff planning. It had been improvised in August 1944 when the Normandy breakout moved so rapidly that conventional supply systems collapsed under their own success. Major General Frank S. Ross, commanding the Transportation Corps in European Theater of Operations, faced an impossible problem on August 21, 1944. Allied armies were advancing 80 kilometers daily. Supply lines stretched 400 kilometers from Normandy beaches to the front. Railways remained demolished by Allied bombing and German demolitions. The only solution was trucks. Thousands of trucks operating continuously on dedicated highways cleared of all other traffic. The concept violated every principle of efficient logistics. Dedicating entire highway networks to one-way traffic created massive inefficiencies. Trucks returning empty consumed the same fuel as loaded vehicles but carried nothing. The system required enormous numbers of vehicles, drivers, and maintenance personnel. Wehrmacht logistics doctrine would have rejected such waste as operationally unsustainable. American logistics doctrine didn't care about efficiency. It cared about delivery tonnage. If waste was necessary to move supplies, America possessed resources to waste. On August 25, 1944, Ross designated Highway 177 from Cherbourg to Chartres, a 360-kilometer route, as dedicated one-way truck traffic only. Within 72 hours, 5,958 trucks were operating in continuous convoy on what became known as the Red Ball Express, named after railroad terminology for priority freight. The organizational structure emerged through controlled chaos. Truck companies, each operating 48 vehicles, were grouped into provisional battalions. Units operated 24 hours daily in round-the-clock shifts. Convoys departed every 30 minutes. Average speed was mandated at 40 kilometers per hour with strict enforcement. Traffic control points every 25 kilometers monitored flow and directed vehicles to maintenance areas when breakdowns occurred. The system expanded rapidly. By September 15, 1944, 132 truck companies were operating across 3 separate highway routes, totaling 850 kilometers of dedicated roadway. Peak operations involved 5,958 trucks driven by 23,000 soldiers, supported by 2,500 maintenance personnel at 26 designated repair facilities positioned every 35 kilometers along the routes. The numbers that sustained the Red Ball Express would have staggered Wehrmacht logistics planners. American truck production had reached levels German industry couldn't approach. General Motors alone manufactured 528,863 military trucks during the war years. The Chevrolet 1.5-ton truck, backbone of the Red Ball Express, rolled off assembly lines at GMC Truck and Coach Division in Pontiac, Michigan, at rates exceeding 200 units daily at peak production. By contrast, German truck production for the entire war totaled approximately 345,000 vehicles of all types. American production exceeded Germany's total output in trucks alone by a factor of 3.2. More significantly, American trucks arrived at European ports with standardized parts, maintenance protocols, and operator training already established. German forces operated captured vehicles from 8 different nations, each requiring unique parts and expertise. The infrastructure supporting Red Ball Express operations demonstrated American resource abundance at scales that contradicted German assumptions about possible logistics capabilities. The system consumed 300,000 gallons of gasoline daily just for truck operations, equivalent to the entire fuel allocation for a German Panzer Division's operational reserves. Tire replacement occurred at rates exceeding 1,000 units weekly, more than German monthly production for all military vehicles combined. Maintenance operations revealed the gap between American and German logistical philosophy. The Red Ball Express established 26 maintenance points along its routes, each staffed by 80 to 120 mechanics, working in 3 shifts. Parts inventory at each location included 2,847 common components. When parts weren't available, vehicles were cannibalized. American Logistics accepted 15 to 20% vehicle non-operational rates as normal. They simply operated enough trucks that losses were absorbed without impacting delivery tonnage. This approach horrified German efficiency doctrine, but worked through sheer scale. If 1,000 trucks were needed, America deployed 1,200 and accepted that 200 would be non-operational at any time. Germany couldn't afford such waste because they lacked the production capacity to make it viable. American abundance made inefficiency irrelevant. Personnel allocation demonstrated similar scale advantages. The Red Ball Express employed 23,000 drivers and 2,500 maintenance personnel. This exceeded the total German Transportation Corps manpower allocated to Army Group B, which was responsible for defending against the entire Allied advance from Netherlands to Switzerland, a 500-kilometer front. The demographic composition contradicted Nazi racial ideology in ways German intelligence noted but couldn't process. Approximately 75% of Red Ball Express drivers were African American soldiers, primarily from quartermaster truck companies. These soldiers, deemed racially inferior by Nazi doctrine, were outperforming German logistics on every measurable metric. The 666th Quartermaster Truck Company, commanded by Major William C. Bates, delivered 94.3% of assigned tonnage through October and November 1944, superior performance compared to white units operating under identical conditions. When winter arrived in December 1944, Wehrmacht planners expected vindication of their predictions. Instead, they witnessed American logistics operations that seemed to violate physical laws. December 3rd, 1944 marked the first sustained cold period, with temperatures dropping to minus 12 degrees Celsius. German intelligence officers monitoring Allied communications detected no reduction in supply deliveries. By December 10th, with temperatures at minus 15 degrees Celsius and snow accumulation exceeding 40 centimeters along primary routes, Red Ball Express convoys continued operating at 87% of summer capacity. The techniques that enabled this performance emerged from American engineering pragmatism rather than theoretical logistics planning. Lieutenant Colonel John H. Cawley, commanding the 17th Truck Battalion, documented in his operations journal the specific modifications implemented to maintain winter operations. Vehicles operated in continuous rotation with engines never fully shut down. Every truck carried 2 complete sets of tire chains, installed at first sign of ice. Windshield washer systems were retrofitted with pure alcohol to prevent freezing. Engine oil was changed every 800 kilometers instead of standard 1,600 kilometers, wasteful by German standards, but effective. Cooling systems were drained nightly and refilled with fresh antifreeze mixtures tested to minus 40 degrees Celsius. The maintenance infrastructure scaled to meet winter demands. Each of the 26 maintenance points established heated repair bays using portable oil-fired heaters shipped from the United States. Parts inventory expanded to include cold weather-specific components. By January 1st, 1945, each maintenance point stocked 847 additional cold weather items beyond standard inventory. More parts diversity than entire German Transportation Corps depots maintained. Convoy operations adapted through controlled experimentation. Minimum convoy size increased from 12 vehicles to 24 to ensure mutual support during breakdowns. Following distance expanded from 50 meters to 100 meters to account for reduced braking capability on ice. Speed limits decreased from 40 to 25 kilometers per hour during heavy snow, but convoys operated continuously rather than halting. Moving slowly was more efficient than stopping and restarting frozen vehicles. The 3348th Quartermaster Truck Company, commanded by Captain Robert W. Hargrove, exemplified winter performance. Operating between Verdun and Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge's worst weather from December 19th through December 31st, the company completed 94 round trips, totaling 31,720 kilometers, delivering 2,847 tons of ammunition, fuel, and supplies. Temperatures during this period averaged -18 degrees Celsius, with 3 days dropping below -20 degrees Celsius. German logistics doctrine would have suspended operations under these conditions. American logistics accepted reduced efficiency and compensated with increased vehicle numbers. The Battle of the Bulge created the decisive test of competing logistics philosophies. German offensive planning specifically counted on American logistics collapse under winter conditions combined with sudden increased demand. When German forces attacked on December 16, 1944, they severed primary Red Ball express routes and captured forward supply dumps. Wehrmacht intelligence estimated this would force American operations to halt within 48 hours while new supply lines were established. The estimate proved systematically wrong. Within 6 hours of the German breakthrough, Red Ball Express Operations Officer Lieutenant Colonel Gordon B. Rogers had redirected 89 truck companies from supporting First Army operations to emergency supply missions for Bastogne and other threatened positions. The flexibility violated German organizational assumptions. Wehrmacht logistics required 72 to 96 hours to redirect divisional supply allocations through proper channels. American logistics reorganized while still moving. The 666th Quartermaster Truck Company received new orders at 4:20 p.m. on December 16th, while still 120 kilometers from their assigned destination. By 6:15 p.m., the company had reversed course and was moving toward Bastogne with priority ammunition loads. German forces, observing the immediate response, reported to higher headquarters that American logistics demonstrated impossible flexibility, suggesting pre-positioned reserves. Intelligence assessments couldn't accept that American logistics simply rerouted in real time because they possessed sufficient vehicles to make immediate redirection operationally viable. The critical delivery to Bastogne occurred on December 23, 1944, when weather briefly cleared enough for aerial resupply, but trucks remained the primary delivery method. The 3348th Quartermaster Truck Company, previously mentioned, broke through German lines at 2:30 a.m. with 42 trucks carrying 389,000 rounds of 105mm artillery ammunition. Captain Hargrove's after-action report noted, German forces attempted to block the convoy at 3 locations. We bypassed 2 roadblocks and drove through the third. Speed and surprise proved more effective than armor. The tactical audacity reflected logistics abundance. Wehrmacht doctrine couldn't risk valuable trucks in direct combat because replacements required months to arrive. American doctrine accepted losses because replacement vehicles arrived from ports continuously. The 3348th lost 6 trucks during the Bastogne run. These were replaced within 48 hours from the 112th Truck Company's excess allocation. German assessment of American logistics underwent systematic transformation as winter operations continued without the predicted collapse. December 18, 1944. Wehrmacht logistics assessment. American supply situation critical. Winter weather preventing normal delivery operations. Enemy forces at Bastogne will exhaust supplies within 72 hours maximum. December 26, 1944. Revised assessment from 5th Panzer Army. American resupply capability exceeds previous estimates. Enemy maintains delivery operations despite weather conditions that should prevent mechanized movement. Request clarification on American vehicle numbers and cold weather preparation methods. January 5, 1945. Army Group B Intelligence Report. American logistics demonstrate capabilities that contradict established doctrine. Recommend complete reassessment of enemy supply methodology. Previous estimates of American vehicle numbers appear understated by factor of 3 to 4. The most revealing assessment came from captured documents at Army Group B headquarters following German surrender. Oberst Ernst Krebs, Chief Logistics Officer, had maintained detailed analysis of American supply operations. His January 30, 1945 memorandum to higher command stated, "The American logistics system operates on principles foreign to our experience. They accept inefficiency rates we would consider operationally catastrophic, yet achieve delivery tonnages exceeding our theoretical maximum by margins of 400 to 500%. They maintain vehicle numbers we believed physically impossible to sustain. Their maintenance infrastructure exceeds our primary depot capabilities at routine convoy stopping points. Most significantly, They appear unconcerned with resource waste on scales we find incomprehensible. The post-war interrogation of General Lieutenant von Lüttwitz, conducted at Langensalza prisoner of war facility on June 14, 1945, revealed the psychological impact of the reversal. Asked about German logistics planning for the Ardennes offensive, von Lüttwitz stated, "We calculated American supply lines would collapse under winter conditions, combined with sudden increased operational demands. We based this on our own logistics capabilities and Russian front experience. We were systematically wrong. The Americans operated truck numbers we thought impossible. They maintained those trucks under conditions we believed would halt mechanized movement. They delivered supplies at rates exceeding our peacetime railway capacity, using vehicles on roads in winter blizzards. We fought an enemy whose logistics didn't follow rules we understood." The gap between German expectations and American reality reflected fundamental differences in industrial capacity and organizational philosophy. German logistics efficiency optimized scarce resources through systematic planning. American logistics accepted waste because industrial production made efficiency irrelevant to delivery outcomes. The statistical comparison demonstrated the gap. During January 1945, the coldest month with average temperatures at -14 degrees Celsius, Red Ball Express operations delivered 389,847 tons of supplies to forward areas. This exceeded the entire German railway capacity for Army Group B for the same period by a factor of 2.8. The American delivery occurred using trucks on roads in winter conditions. German railway capacity represented their most efficient supply method, operating under controlled conditions. Personnel comparisons revealed similar disparities. The 23,000 soldiers operating Red Ball Express represented less than 3% of American logistics personnel in European theater. German Transportation Corps allocated 68% of available logistics manpower to Army Group B operations, approximately 31,000 personnel, to support defensive operations along a narrower front against the same forces the Red Ball Express was supplying. The most devastating comparison involved resources devoted to supply operations. Red Ball Express consumed 300,000 gallons of gasoline daily for truck operations alone, fuel that delivered supplies but produced no direct combat effect. This was acceptable waste because American fuel production exceeded 6 million barrels daily, and European theater allocation represented less than 15% of total output. Germany's total fuel production averaged 124,000 barrels daily across all sources. American logistics waste exceeded German production. Post-war logistics studies by both American and German military historians established the Red Ball Express as revolutionary not in technique, but in scale. The system employed no innovations German logistics theory couldn't comprehend. The decisive advantage was industrial capacity, enabling redundancy at levels that made theoretical efficiency meaningless. Major General Frank Ross, reflecting on the operations in his 1946 after-action report, stated, "We succeeded not through superior planning, but through superior resources." German logistics doctrine was theoretically more efficient. Our advantage was that efficiency didn't matter when we could deploy 4 times the vehicles, accept 3 times the loss rates, and maintain operations through conditions that should have halted movement. We solved logistics problems by overwhelming them with resources rather than optimizing scarce capacity. German post-war analysis proved more philosophical. General der Panzertruppen Hermann Balck, in a 1979 interview with U.S. Army historians, addressed the logistics gap. "We calculated, planned, optimized every resource. The Americans simply produced more than they needed and accepted waste we couldn't afford. In Russia, we learned that winter defeats logistics. The Americans proved that production defeats winter. The lesson is profound. Modern warfare is decided by industrial capacity before armies engage. We fought the wrong war. We needed factories, not better tactics." The Red Ball Express legacy extended beyond World War II. Modern military logistics doctrine acknowledges redundancy as an operational requirement rather than inefficiency. The U.S. military maintains vehicle inventories at 140 to 160% of theoretical requirements specifically to absorb loss rates without impacting operations, a direct application of Red Ball Express principles scaled to modern warfare. The operational statistics vindicate the approach. Between August 25, 1944 and November 16, 1944, when advancing front lines made the dedicated highway system obsolete, the Red Ball Express delivered 412,193 tons of supplies across 130,000 convoy trips, totaling 89 million truck kilometers. Winter operations from December 1944 through March 1945 delivered an additional 587,000 tons, under conditions German planning assumed would halt mechanized logistics entirely. The 666 Quartermaster Truck Company, commanded by Major Bates, received the meritorious unit commendation for delivering 97.8% of assigned tonnage through the entire period, including the worst winter weather. The citation noted, "Despite enemy action, extreme weather, and continuous operations over extended periods, the 666th maintained delivery schedules that exceeded peacetime standards." The African-American soldiers who comprised the company had defeated both Nazi racial theory and Wehrmacht logistics doctrine simultaneously, achievement through superior performance that required no additional commentary. What German generals expected would stop American mobile operations, winter conditions that should have frozen supply lines solid, instead became merely another logistics variable that industrial abundance solved through redundant capacity. General Lieutenant von Lüttwitz had studied the weather reports carefully, calculated correctly according to Wehrmacht doctrine, and reached conclusions that proved systematically wrong because German logistics theory couldn't conceive of armies that solved problems by overwhelming them with resources rather than optimizing scarce capacity. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that modern industrial warfare isn't won through tactical efficiency, but through production capacity sufficient to make efficiency irrelevant. American trucks delivered through minus 20 degrees Celsius blizzards, not because of superior cold weather technology, but because America deployed enough trucks that acceptable loss rates still achieved required delivery. Tonnages. Winter didn't stop Patton because American logistics had already solved the problem by building so many trucks that some could freeze solid, and operations continued regardless. The lesson extends beyond logistics to warfare itself. German calculations were correct within their framework. American operations simply operated outside that framework, in a realm where production capacity eliminated constraints. German planning considered absolute. The Third Reich couldn't match American industrial output. Everything else, tactics, training, doctrine, weather, proved secondary to that fundamental disparity. The Red Ball Express didn't defeat winter. American factories did.